Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex source materials and, well, we break them down so you can grasp them quickly.
That's the plan.
Today, we're tackling a really significant piece of South African security law.
Right.
The National Key Points Act 102 of 1980.
Ah, yes, a foundational act. It's known for, well, two main things, really. First, defining what's considered absolutely critical infrastructure.
Right.
And second, maybe more controversially, putting a huge security cost burden right onto the private owners of these places.
So our mission today is to slice through that legal language, understand how it works, and really get at that core tension. State control versus, well, private liability.
Exactly. Who controls, who pays.
Okay, but before we get into the weeds, there's something we need to address up front. Its current status, its legal lifespan, if you will.
Crucial context.
Yes, we're looking at the Act as it stands, updated through 2022, so it's definitely still governing things right now. But it's on its way out, technically.
That's right. It's vital to understand this. The Act started way back, July 1980, but it's officially set to be repealed by a newer law, the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act of 2019.
And this is the key bit that new Act hasn't actually been switched on yet. The commencement date hasn't been proclaimed.
Precisely. So the National Key Points Act, the one we're discussing, it's still legally binding. It's the law today. We're analyzing something foundational, very powerful, and very much still in effect.
Okay, got it. So let's unpack this beast. The big theme is this transfer of financial burden onto owners. Where do we start? How does the state even justify taking this level of control over private property? What's the trigger?
Well, the trigger is set incredibly high. It really starts with the definitions in the Act. You have place, which is defined quite broadly: premises, buildings, industrial complexes, installations.
Standard stuff.
Yeah, and Area 2 land or water surfaces. But the real power, the activation switch, comes from the definition of an incident.
Okay, and I remember looking at this. That definition is, well, it's quite specific and alarming. An incident isn't just any problem, is it?
Not at all. It's defined as any occurrence stemming from or related to terroristic activities, sabotage, espionage, or subversion.
Wow. Okay, so not petty crime, not riots necessarily, but things that could genuinely undermine the state itself.
Exactly. This whole legal machinery isn't for stopping, everyday theft or minor disturbances. It's laser focused on protecting national assets from threats that could fundamentally destabilize the country.
And the person in charge of this whole apparatus?
That's the minister. And the Act is very specific. It means the Minister of Defense.
The Minister of Defense overseeing private industrial sites. Okay, that alone tells you the level of seriousness the government attached to this.
Absolutely.
So what's the actual legal hurdle the minister has to clear to say, right, this factory, this dam, it's now a national key point?
The threshold is designed to be broad in scope but serious in implication. The minister needs to decide that the place or area is so important that its loss, damage, disruption, or immobilization, think about those words, may prejudice the Republic.
Prejudice the Republic, that's a heavy phrase.
It is. Or, alternatively, if declaring it is simply necessary or expedient for the safety of the Republic or in the public interest. So there's a bit of leeway there. But the core idea is grave national consequence.
So it's not just this is important infrastructure. It's more like if this goes down, the nation could be seriously harmed.
That's the essence of it, yes.
And once the minister makes that call, how fast does the owner get the news that they're now under this, well, military security umbrella?
The Act says notification must be immediate. The owner must be forthwith notified by written notice.
Forthwith, no delay.
No delay. And there's no room for argument at that stage.
Yeah.
The declaration is a unilateral act by the state.
Okay, that leads to the next question. Who actually gets this notice? Who counts as the owner in the eyes of this law? Is it just the person holding the title deed?
No, and that's a really critical point. The definition of owner is deliberately wide to make sure someone is always responsible. It includes the registered owner, sure, but also any lawful occupier, think a long-term tenant or lessee.
Ah, okay.
And crucially, if the state itself owns or occupies the place, the owner, for the Act's purposes, is the head of the government department that controls it.
So no loopholes based on who technically owns the land versus who runs the operation.
Exactly. It pins the responsibility clearly.
What about situations where you've got, say, a big industrial park? Multiple owners side by side, all potentially needing protection together. Does the Act handle that?
It does. That's covered in Section 2A. The minister can declare a national key points complex.
That complex, okay.
Yeah, if the minister thinks that joint security measures by two or more owners would be beneficial for safeguarding the area, they can group them together.
Makes sense from a coordination perspective, I suppose.
It does. It allows the state to manage security across a wider, perhaps shared risk zone more efficiently. But, and this is really important, being part of a complex doesn't let any individual owner off the hook.
Ah,
They still have their own personal mandatory duties under Section 3 of the Act. Being in a complex doesn't dilute individual responsibility.
okay. Section 3. This sounds like where we get to the real core of it, the mandatory duties. And back to our theme. The state dictates, but who picks up the tab?
This is where that tension you mentioned really bites. Section 3, subsection 1, the owner's primary duty is to take steps for the security of the key point after consultation with the minister.
Okay, consultation sounds reasonable.
But crucially, these steps must be taken at the owner's own expense.
Own expense. There it is.
And wait for it,
Ah,
to the satisfaction of the minister.
hold on. So the minister consults, tells you what you're doing, decides if you've done it well enough, and the owner pays the entire bill.
That's the framework, yes. It's a profound policy choice, isn't it? The state essentially externalizing the cost of protecting what it deems nationally critical onto private entities.
That seems like an enormous financial burden, potentially unpredictable too, depending on what the minister deems satisfactory.
It absolutely can be. And the Act builds in enforcement if the owner doesn't comply. If the owner fails to take those initial steps satisfactorily, the minister doesn't just shrug.
What happens?
Under Section 3.2, the minister can issue a formal written order. This order specifies exactly what steps the owner must take and gives them a deadline. And again,
Let me guess.
it must be done at the owner's expense.
Wow. Okay, so if the owner still refuses, or maybe just can't afford it, or fails to act for whatever reason without reasonable cause, what then? This is where the penalties kick in, right?
Yes, and they are serious. Section 3.3. It's an offense to refuse or fail to take the specified steps. The penalties are a fine not exceeding our $20,000, which was a lot more money back then, though it hasn't been inflation adjusted in the text, or imprisonment for up to 5 years, or potentially both.
5 years in prison for not implementing security measures you were ordered to pay for. That's quite the stick.
It's significant leverage, and the state's power doesn't even end with prosecution.
Oh.
No. Regardless of whether the owner is actually prosecuted or convicted, the minister has another option. They can simply step in, take the required steps themselves, or hire someone else to do it.
And send the bill to the owner.
And then recover the entire cost from the owner to the extent the minister decides is fair. Basically, the minister determines how much of the cost the owner should bear.
So you could face criminal charges, maybe even jail time, and still end up paying for the work the state did because you didn't. That's like a financial double whammy on top of the mandatory cost transfer.
It certainly seems designed to ensure compliance one way or another.
And I imagine this gets even more complicated if you're part of one of those key points complexes.
It does. Section 3, subsections 4 and 5 deal with this. For a complex, the minister orders the owners to take joint security steps. They're supposed to agree on how to split the costs.
Supposed to.
Right. If they delay or just can't agree on the cost apportionment, the minister steps in again, determines who pays what proportion, and can recover those costs from each relevant owner.
And if one owner in the complex fails to do their part of the joint measures,
Same penalties apply. They face that $20,000 fine or 5 years imprisonment. The collective nature doesn't shield individual failure.
this level of control is quite something. The state isn't just dictating standards, it's dictating actions, costs, and enforcing with severe penalties. In fact, Section 3A allows the minister to basically take over the security operation entirely, doesn't it?
Yes, Section 3A is quite powerful. The minister can take over the security steps either with the owner's consent, maybe if the owner just wants the state to handle it, or unilaterally if the owner has failed to implement the steps they were ordered to take. The state just takes charge of getting it done.
And there was a fascinating detail in there about contracts, right?
Ah, yes. This shows the depth of potential intervention. If it helps with securing the key point, the minister can actually step into the owner's shoes regarding existing contracts the owner has with third-party security providers.
So the minister takes over the contract.
With the third party's consent, yes. The minister can basically assume the owner's contractual obligations if it contributes to the overall security goal. That's a pretty significant level of state intrusion into private commercial agreements.
Justified presumably by that high bar of national security espionage. Sabotage.
That's the justification provided within the Act's framework, yes.
Okay, so this constant activity ministerial orders, potential takeovers, coordinating complexes, it must require funding on the state side too, even if owners pay for their own direct measures. How is that handled?
Good question. That brings us to Section 3B, the special account for the safeguarding of national key points.
A dedicated fund.
Exactly. It's the financial engine for the state's side of this operation. It gets money from a few places, funds directly allocated by Parliament, money potentially moved over from other government departments, but only with the finance minister's okay.
Right.
Crucially, all those costs recovered from owners who didn't comply.
Ah, so the penalties feed the fund.
They can, yes.
Oh,
Plus interest earned on the account's money and any other funds from various sources.
and what's this special account actually used for?
Primarily three things. One, providing financial assistance to owners. This could include loans, potentially at set interest rates, to help them actually meet the security costs the Act imposes on them.
So help to comply with the burden the state created.
Okay.
2, covering the state's own costs when it has to step in and take over security measures under those enforcement sections we discussed. 3.3b, 3IB, 3A.
Makes sense.
And 3, just general spending related to safeguarding key points. It funds the state's capacity to enforce and intervene. Let's shift slightly to the information side. Given the threats involved espionage, subversion secrecy must be a major component. How does the Act handle information control? Section 4, right?
Yes, Section 4 is all about information. The minister has the power to order any person to provide information relevant to a key point.
Any person, not just the owner.
Any person. And there are penalties for non-compliance or deception. Giving false information or disclosing security details you received under the Act without proper authorization carries a hefty penalty, up to $10,000 fine or 3 years in prison.
Reinforces that high security, almost classified nature of key point operations.
Definitely. Disclosure is only allowed if the minister explicitly authorizes it or if it's absolutely necessary for performing your official duties or your functions as an owner. Otherwise, lip sealed.
Now, one aspect that often draws attention is Section 11, regarding the guards who physically protect these sites. The minister gets sweeping powers here.
Immense powers, yes. Section 11 allows the minister to make regulations about almost everything concerning guards at key points, their requirements, their training,
Okay, standard stuff.
but also, crucially, their powers. Specifically, powers related to searching people, seizing items, making arrests.
Arrests on potentially private property.
Yes. And this is the really significant part. The regulations can specify the guard's powers regarding the application of reasonable force, including the use of firearms.
Whoa, let's just pause on that. The Act allows the Minister of Defense to make regulations that could give private security guards employed by the owner but operating under this Act's umbrella the power of arrest and the sanctioned use of lethal force.
That's what Section 11 enables. It's an extraordinary delegation of state power linked directly to the protection of these critical sites.
And presumably there's protection for those exercising these powers.
Absolutely. Section 7 provides very broad immunity. It indemnifies the state, the minister, and anyone in state service against liability for loss or damage. Things like bodily injury, death, property damage, if it arises from actions ordered or carried out under this Act.
A significant legal shield for actions taken in the name of key point security.
A very significant shield.
Okay, let's try and pull some threads together. What does this entire structure mean in practice? Can we summarize the overall scope?
Sure. I think a few key takeaways. First, this isn't just about imposing rules on private companies. Section 13 makes it clear. The Act binds the state itself. Government departments that own or run key points have the same duties.
Good point. It applies across the board.
Second, while the Act imposes mandatory minimum security levels, Section 8 explicitly preserves the owner's right to do more. They can implement additional security measures beyond what the minister requires. The Act sets the floor, not the ceiling.
Right. And we should probably loop back to the general offenses in Section 10, which connects this Act directly to older espionage laws.
Yes, that's important context. Section 10 makes it a specific crime under this Act to hinder an owner or any security personnel carrying out their duties.
Okay.
But it also says that committing any act at a national key point, which would have been an offense under the old Official Secrets Act of 1956, is automatically an offense under this Act, too. It explicitly links key point security to counter-espionage concerns.
Tying it all together. And how does the minister actually check if all these duties are being performed, if the security is adequate, Enforcement needs oversight.
That's Section 12. Powers of entry. The minister or anyone they authorize can enter any declared place or area at any time.
For what purpose?
To exercise any powers under the Act, really? To verify information they might have requested under Section 4, to gather new information, or just to physically inspect the security measures being taken. It's the on-the-ground compliance check.
But this power and others can be delegated.
Most powers can, yes, under Section 9. The minister can authorize officials to act on their behalf. However, there are crucial limits. The power to appoint personnel, like committees mentioned in Section 6, cannot be delegated. Neither can the power to make those highly sensitive regulations under Section 11, the ones governing guard powers, use of force, etc. Those key decisions remain with the minister.
So some checks and balances, ensuring ultimate political accountability for the most potent powers.
That seems to be the intent, yes.
This has been a really thorough look at a very potent law. It's clear the entire mechanism is built around preventing those most serious threats: sabotage, espionage, subversion. The structure, the mandatory private expense, the state control, the severe penalties. It all speaks to the absolutely critical nature of the places this act was designed to protect.
It absolutely does. It starkly defines the state's priority. Absolute control over essential infrastructure is paramount. And the cost of that control, well, that gets pushed onto the owners.
And as we mentioned right at the start, this whole foundational system is, in theory, about to change. It's slated for repeal by the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act.
That's the big question hanging over all of this. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. Given that the core tension in this act is that mandatory owner expense versus ultimate state control and satisfaction, how might this new incoming legislation fundamentally shift that precarious balance? Will the costs still fall so heavily on owners? Will the state retain the same level of operational authority? That's something worth watching very closely as the legal landscape evolves.